Thanks so much for that. Um, so, as introduced, I'm Linda Hamilton from Through the Night, and I'm actually speaking on behalf of Love to Dream today. So, thanks for coming along and having a listen to our sleepy little tips. And my hope today is that you can go home, and if you're expecting that, you can have these in the back of your mind for when bub comes along. But if you do have a baby, that these tips today are actually quite practical, so you can implement them tonight even for when you go home. So I'm sure that's what people want, is something practical to hear. So there's our first slide. I'm going to go to the next one. So I just like to show this photo, not to showcase myself, but really just to tell you that I'm a twin mum, and I know exactly what it's like to be tired, exhausted, at my wit's end. I've been there, I've done that. I can just tell you how I was feeling. I mean, I can remember it still. I see parents walking around here today, and I remember, trying to rock the baby in the pram and trying to get them to sleep. So I fully understand where you're at. So once we got sleep sorted, I did find that was the turning point for us. We had a bit of more peace back in our lives, and we had a bit more of a nice lifestyle, and we were in control a bit more, which I guess for myself, I like to feel a little bit in control of my life, so I'm sure other people do as well. And when a baby comes along, we are just thrown out. We just don't really know what's going on. So we're going to talk a lot about tips today. But the first one, I just want to talk a little bit about the importance of sleep and what type of sleep we should be having. So I guess we all function best off uninterrupted sleep. But with our babies, we're not always going to get uninterrupted sleep. And our babies do function best off that uninterrupted sleep as well. So for our babies and our children, they tend to need somewhere between about 10 to 13 hours overnight. You'd be lucky if you had 13 hours. It's very rare, but some do. So I do find that somewhere between there, they do wake up quite well rested in the morning and ready to start the day. So just the importance of sleep, that's what I'm talking about, is just that it's important not just for our babies, but it's also important for us. And why it's important is because it can affect our mood. It can affect, for me personally, it actually affected the way I enjoyed my children during the day. I found that they just wake up, I just want them to go back to sleep because I was so tired. And it can also get to the point where it can affect our relationships a bit, which we don't really want it to get there. And when we have our babies, we don't think it's going to get there. So they're just the things that if you're sort of going through those things, you think, okay, well, maybe I do need to get sleep a little bit more under control. So we can be moody, we can affect our focus and our relationships. So just so you know, there's really no pressure for our babies at a young age to be sleeping right through the night. So if you're sitting there today thinking, my baby isn't sleeping through, that's okay. Every baby will really sleep through in their own time. But by following the things that I am going to share with you today, I believe that if you do implement some of these things, then you should be right on your way to actually getting a full night's sleep. So the first thing I like to talk about is tired signs. Now, babies do thrive when they're in a routine, and I do as well, but our babies definitely do, and they work best when they're in a routine. So the common tired signs that I've just got up here, I'm just going to read them out. So we've got eye rubbing, ear pulling, yawning, jerky movements, fist clenching, looking away, being glassy-eyed, fussiness, crying, whinging, and the redness around the eyes, or even just the eyebrows go a bit red. So every baby will have different tired signs, and it's really important to know what your baby's tired signs are, so then you can go, okay, well, you need to go to bed now, basically. Because if we miss that cue, often it's harder to get your baby down. So if you want to take photos of the slides, feel free. Just thought I'd mention it to everyone else. So getting them down before they're overtired is really, really important. And setting up cues for naps and for bedtime is really important as well. So swaddles, for example, even the cue of the zip up can be a cue that it's actually the last initial, okay, I'm going to go to bed now. So I personally really love swaddles right from birth, and obviously I'm speaking on behalf of Love to Dream today, but honestly the first thing we did when we got home is, I got home and my husband went out to our local baby shop and bought 6 swaddles, those Love to Dream swaddle up, and we just lived off them. They pretty much lived in them for the first 3 to 6 months of their life. I don't think anyone ever saw them out of their swaddles. So I really love them. Now, the next thing is just make sure I've got it, it's just how to prepare for nap time. So being as consistent as you can with your babies, and showing them those same cues over and over again, the more they'll understand that nap time is coming, the more they'll understand that bedtime is coming. Now, bedtime I'm going to talk about a little bit further down the track, but you can see here is, if possible and as much as possible, have them sleep in their own room or in your room or in their bed, wherever they're sleeping at their age. So just so it sends that message to them of what's expected. Now, we can't sit at home all the time, but obviously when you're home, you know, you can actually just use their cot as a place to sleep. You can then go and get some things done. We want to get things done as parents. So being consistent, can't stress it enough. And I would implement a short nap time routine. So a lot of people just think, oh, you know, sleep consultants are all about routine. But again, our babies do really thrive off routine. And again, it's about setting up those cues that they know that nap time is coming. So this is a really practical tip. And if your baby's struggling to fall asleep for a nap, what I'd recommend is setting up, you know, even 5 minutes. And it's just setting up those little cues that nap is next. So as an example, this is, if you change the nappy here, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay as well. But most people would head into their baby's room or into the room that they're sleeping in and change their nappy. They would then put them in their swaddle, sit down in a chair, read a book or sing a song or something, and then put them into bed. So you can see there that they give them essentially a bit of wind down time, because sometimes our babies are on the floor, they're playing, and then all of a sudden you're going, okay, there's your tired sign, pick you up, straight into your swaddle down. And there's just not enough time for them to wind down, and there's not enough cues there for them to go, okay, I do need to go to sleep now. So definitely set up some sort of short nap time routine to help them understand what's going on next. So just another thing about the swaddles is really, again, what I said about the zip up, it can be a cue as well. But also with babies that, you know, don't use dummies and things like that, the swaddle up actually allows them to self-soothe and suck on their hands. So that always really helps. It doesn't, you know, their arms aren't out yet, but they're up and they're easily accessible to sort of help themselves get off to sleep. And sometimes I know with my twins, I found that they'd wake up and it was all full of saliva, but that's okay. You can just wash it. So they definitely help with sleep. So transitions, a lot of people asking me about transitions and when to move out of swaddles, when to move into sleeping bags, when to go into beds, when to move out of mum and dad's room, and all of that sort of thing. But today we're just going to talk a little bit about transitioning from a swaddle into a sleeping bag, because that's, for this age group, that's probably the most important thing. So I always recommend somewhere between, say, about 12 to 20 weeks that's when you make that transition. So it doesn't mean that at 12 weeks you have to start doing it, and we're going to go through the signs of that in a second. But this is the age where they would start to make that transition on their own. So how to do this? Use the transition swaddle and have one arm out. It's really, you can be really flexible. It depends on what your baby's signs of rolling are, but I would recommend anywhere between 1 to 2 days and 1 to 2 weeks. So 1 to 2 days, 1 to 2 weeks, you can alternate arms. The zips on the swaddles actually allow you to have one arm out, the next arm out. You can alternate them as much as you want. It's completely up to you. Some find that they just get really flappy with one arm, and that's okay. You've got the flexibility to take the other one off as well. But from what I said before about being consistent, sometimes we can actually confuse our babies, which we don't want to do. So if we take one arm out and they're getting used to it, and all of a sudden we think, oh no, this just is not working, and they're showing all the signs of rolling and all of that, it's probably best just to keep going and keep the arm out and just get them used to it, because they will need to get used to having their arms out because of safety. So, and often if we then pop the zip back on, then they're confused and they'll just wait for that zip to go back on. So it's best just to be consistent and keep on going with what you're doing. So why do we transition so early? Safety is the most important thing, as it says up there. So safety first. It's really unsafe for our babies to still be in a swaddle once they're rolling. I mean, that's common sense, but you know, some of us don't know that. And I do think that if they roll over, yes, they can still hold themselves up, but they just have more flexibility when their arms are out. So once they start showing those first signs of rolling, that's when you think, okay, time to make that transition. Some people think, oh, well, you know, we've got to 20 weeks and they're still not rolling, then maybe you'd want to consider starting that transition as well. So sleeping bag benefits, they're warm. No, well, I don't know. When they're younger, they tend to stay under blankets, but as they get older, they wriggle around so much and they move about. So I would keep them in a sleeping bag for as long as you can, and normally you do it up until they're in a bed. With my twins, we actually kept them, they're still in their cots. People think I'm mad, but they don't jump out. They're completely happy in their cots. So they're in there, and I've actually got a doona in there now because it's safe for them. They're 3, so it's safe for them to be out of their, to be under a doona. So to keep them warm, in winter it's freezing. It's a really common reason why babies actually wake up in the night is because they're cold. Sometimes they can wake because they're too hot. So, you know, it's kind of, yeah, lose-lose situation. But, okay, so different types of thicknesses to choose from, so they're not too hot and not too cold. And again, the safety thing. So it eliminates the risk of them going under their blankets and not being able to breathe and all of that, which we definitely don't want, right? So for the warmer months, and look, this is even before Love to Dream asked me to speak today. I'm a massive fan of the Nuslin sleeping bag. If you've ever seen it or you've never seen it, go and look at it today. But it's actually a 0.2 tog, which I love. And in Sydney in summer, it's really, really hot. And we found that they were still warm in them, even with just a nappy on. So I always recommend this product just because they're not too hot during the day. And you can also use them at night. And obviously just dress them a little bit more warmer underneath, because it might get down to 20 degrees instead of 30. So I definitely recommend going and looking at that one today. So the next thing is just about bedtime. Now I don't know if anyone here today hates bedtime, but I know I used to hate bedtime just because there'd be lots of crying and it was just a stressful time. We'd be tag teaming all night until they'd finally go to sleep. So bedtime's really, really important. So everyone always asks me when bedtime should be. So just to take the pressure off, and especially for our really young ones, take the pressure off and sort of look at a day of about 12 hours and a night of about 12 hours. So, you know, for example, if your baby wakes at 8 a.m., which would be lovely, but if they do, then you sort of want to wrap the day up by about 8 o'clock. Now, if naps are shorter, obviously they may go down a little bit earlier than 8 o'clock, but just as a general rule, you want to look at about 12-hour day and 12-hour night. And most babies that I've worked with generally have about a 12-hour night sleep. So maybe not straight through, but still they sleep roughly around 12 hours. So if your baby goes to bed before becoming overtired, then they're much easier to settle. So has anyone here today put down a baby that's overtired or tried to? It's pretty hard. So there's heaps of benefits to putting our babies down before they get overtired. It's good for them because they settle a lot quicker. And we might not think that, because there's a bit of a myth that if you keep your baby up, they'll sleep later in the morning, but that doesn't happen. We've got to check the head over here. So it's definitely a myth. It would be nicer that they went to bed later and woke up later, but generally they wake earlier. If we put them down when they're overtired, they actually can have more night wakings as well, which is what we're trying to avoid. We really want to avoid more night wakings. So I definitely think it's better for our babies to go down before they get overtired, and even hyperactivity in our older kids can actually be a tired sign. So I just working with a family at the moment, and their little toddler decided to, she just said, sorry, this was last night. So I was at her family's house last night, and she said to me, well, it gets to about 7:30 and she's running around. She doesn't seem tired at all. And it's probably because she's overtired. And we actually got her down that little bit earlier, and she settled quite nicely. So there's huge benefits for families or parents as well in getting our babies down, because obviously we have some more us time, some me time. I love watching TV series. So that was my thing. You know, they went to bed and just was able to wind down myself. So really, really important to get them down and to reconnect with our partners or just with ourselves. So with bedtime, predictable bedtime routine, can't stress it enough. When we had our twins, people said to me, you know, do you have a bedtime routine? What is it? And I thought, no, I don't have one. What's the point of it? But it actually is the easiest way to let them know that transition between night and day. So, or day and night, go that way or the other. So definitely, if you don't have a bedtime routine, you're sitting here today and you do have a baby or a toddler, have one tonight if you want to. But definitely go home and try one tonight. That's what I'd recommend. And I've got an example next, which we will go through really briefly. So keeping the routine about 45 minutes. So yeah, that says that up there. So about 45 minutes. When our babies are younger, their feeds go for a lot longer. So obviously you're going to be a bit more flexible with you know, how long that bedtime routine goes for, and often people will have a feed and then sort of start the bedtime routine and then finish off a feed just to top them up before going to bed, so that's fine as well. But definitely I'd say no longer than about 45 minutes, and again it's really about cueing them that bedtime's coming. So this is the last thing, and it's really just an example, because I want you to take a photo if you like, if you don't have a bedtime routine. So bath. Most people start with a bath or a shower. Showers are heaps easier, I find. They're quicker, but that's just my personal opinion. So bath or shower, whatever you decide to do, and then get dressed. So normally people will go into the baby's bedroom or your bedroom, wherever they're sleeping, and sort of then start that wind down time. So bath, get dressed, have a milk feed, either breast or bottle, whatever you choose to do. And then reading a couple of books or singing a couple of songs, whatever you like doing. Most people that I talk to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. You can do that if you like. And then pop them into their cot or their bassinet or their bed, whatever age they're at. So you can see there that, or most people would say, oh, why do we have the milk feed broken up with bed? And the reason for that is just so we can break that association. So you might have heard people talk about sleep associations, and really feeding can be one. So if we're sort of feeding them to sleep, or there's some sort of reason they're falling to sleep, there's a possible connection with that during the night. So I always say, just to remove that association, just have the milk feed, read a couple of books, and then go to bed. And they'll be ready for bed anyway. And it actually can help you avoid more night wakings than what you're having, and our babies can just wake up when they need a feed, rather than waking every hour or 2 hours in the night, or half an hour, which some do. So the best thing you can do is have a bedtime routine. Can't stress that enough. So that's the end of our session today, and I really appreciate you all coming. It's been great. I hope you've got something out of it, and I hope you can come and chat to me afterwards at the Love to Dream stand.